Hey everybody, it's William Green. These are my green pets. And today is January 21st, 2018. We're just going to do a quick update on what things are happening in here, what things are in spike, what things are in bloom, and that's going to be it. So stay tuned. This glorious Bulbophyllum continues to bloom. These have been in bloom since August, and they have produced sequentially one after another blooms for the past few months, and I just couldn't be happier. I was expecting maybe a few, but I think we're on the 8th flower on each spike so far. I'm just really happy with those, and they don't show any signs of stopping. And if we look just below them, we can see on this Oncidium speckled spire on the right there is a little spike pushing out, and then behind it there's another spike. It's kind of blurry, but you can see it right there. Yeah, and so this Oncidium will actually have two spikes out and blooming at the same time, which would be very nice. Next to that Oncidium, we have this lovely Phalaenopsis schilleriana, and it's got a nice little spike. Just a few buds this year, only 6, and it will be blooming out, I guess, probably in another month or so. And then right beside that, we've got another Bulbophyllum, and it has got a spike pushing up. And this has just been such a nice one. It's constantly either blooming or growing a new spike. It's really been nice. I have not had a Bulbophyllum like this that just continues to bloom one after another non-stop. This is my little Paph callosum. It's a seedling. It's blooming for the first time. I grew it from seed. Not from seed. I grew it as a seedling, a little seedling, but it's pushing up its first bloom, and I cannot wait until it goes ahead and blooms. It's funny, when the stem is growing out, it kind of wags its head back and forth, so it's kind of in mid-wag right now, but hopefully that stem will be a lot longer when it finally does open up. Really looking forward to that. Now this little guy down here is a teeny tiny little orchid with a great big flower. You can see it's pushing out a little bud there, and that will be blooming. It's still got a ways to go. This is very slow. It's got a new leaf pushing out there, and looking forward to seeing that bloom again this year. Very pretty little guy. And then of course, Phragmipedium grande. It is very grande indeed. Very tall with the flower spike. Look, we have finally got some bud poking out there. Can't wait until that develops a little bit more. We can finally start to see it bloom. There we go. That first bud is just pushing its little nose out. So, not long now. Now these buds belong to the fascinating and mysterious Bulbophyllum Medusae. Medusa's Bulbophyllum, and it has got quite a few. I haven't even bothered to count. It's got at least 20 spikes on it this year. They've bloomed at kind of different times. You can see these have already come and gone, but we're still going to have a nice show here in a couple weeks when all of these start to open up. They really are just kind of coming out every direction. So really looking forward to seeing that one in bloom. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I plan on dividing this thing in the spring when it warms up. I'm going to split it up into several pieces, so if you are interested, let me know. I'll put you on the list. I've already got a couple people waiting for pieces of this plant, but I think there will be plenty to go around. It's funny, when I got this thing back in March of 2014, and it had 8 growths on it. 8 of these, and here we are 4 years later, or in March it'll be 4 years later, and look at her. That just tells you what these things can do in a few years. They really grow exponentially. And the last little plant that we're going to look at is kind of hiding down here. This is another Bulbophyllum. This is Lovely Elizabeth, and this is a piece off of the one that we saw in the botanical garden greenhouse the other day. This is a piece I broke off a couple years ago, and it's actually got a spike growing there, you can see, but let's go around to the other side of it and let me show you something exciting. Here we are from above, and you can see that first little spike getting pretty tall and getting ready to start pushing out its flowers. But let's go down a little closer to it and look down here. Ta-da! It's got another spike there, and look at the side of this pseudobulb here. Looks kind of fat, doesn't it? I think it's got another spike pushing out there, which means this will have 3 spikes this year. Isn't that great? They won't all be bloomed out at the same time. The flowers on this plant only last year they lasted 4 or 5 days, and that was it. So by the time that first spike is done, the next spike will be coming up, and by the time that second one is done, the third one will be coming up. So it'll be kind of 1, 2, 3, and that'll actually be nice because we'll get to enjoy the flowers at 3 different periods. So really happy about that. These are some of the prettiest Bulbophyllum flowers that I have. They're just great. I really like them. They do smell like stinky fish, but you know, only if you really get your nose in there. They're pretty enough that, you know, it's definitely worth a little bit of stinky fish smell. Let's look at the little baby Cattleyas. I noticed that some other YouTubers have got some baby Cattleyas too, and I said, ooh, look, it's a baby cat club. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what you guys are doing with your baby Cattleyas. I am a little frustrated with some of them. You know, some just, they're not growing that well. Others seem to be growing pretty well. Love seeing new roots like this. That is my favorite thing to see on these plants. Especially these little mounted seedlings here. These have actually done really well mounted. I just took some craft glue a few years ago and just stuck them on there, and they really have grown well. Look at this one. Look how big it's gotten. This was just a little, I mean, it was just tiny, you know, a few years ago. But it actually put out 2 leaves last year, which I thought was pretty impressive for a little seedling. But my main issue with these is roots, and the snails don't help. I have had plenty of little tiny bush snails in there, and every time the root grows out to a nice length, it gets to a point where the snail will eat it off, and then I can never find it. But you can see, for example, here, this root was growing out, you know, grew out, and then the end got eaten off, and then it's starting to push out some little side roots, and hopefully, you know, the snail won't come out of there and eat those, but he probably will. I smashed one just the other day, but you never get them all. You can never get them all. This one was another example. You can see where there was a nice new root growing out down there, and then the tip of it got eaten off, and now it's pushing out a little side one, trying to continue. Every time this happens, it sets them back and slows them down. It's just so frustrating, but without completely repotting them all and cleaning off all the roots and putting in new medium, you just can't guarantee that there's not going to be a snail here and there. And even if you do that, you know, a snail's going to come from somewhere else and get back in there and start the whole thing again. So it's just kind of damage control. That's one reason I do like the mounted ones, because it actually gives the snails fewer places to hide, so they're much more likely to hide kind of like on the undersides of pots and stuff here, where it's kind of moist. Can you see anything? See any snails? That's usually where they are if I find them. But yeah. And then here are the big ones. These are the 3 seedlings that are the largest, and this one down here is actually losing a leaf. I repotted this one recently. I took it out of the round pot and put it into one of the square air cone pots with some new medium. So I'm really hoping that this one, fingers crossed, will put out a blooming growth this year. Fingers crossed. Who knows? Maybe not. But it sure seems like it's getting to be big enough to bloom. If not this year, maybe next year. Let's take a closer look real quick. Okay, here we are beside him. I had kind of a scary issue with these at the beginning of the year. Every fall, every autumn, I've got issues with parts of these Cattleyas turning black, and it's so frustrating. I always try to avoid it, but something always happens. So for example, you can see here in this area, apparently I watered it and got a little bit of water in that little fold there, and then didn't dry it out, or maybe watered it too late in the afternoon, and it sat there for a day or so and turned black. And I was like, oh my gosh, that whole pseudobulb's gonna rot, the leaf's gonna fall off, I'm not gonna get any blooms on this plant for 10 years, frustrating, you know how it is. And it's amazing how fast the black stuff sets in. Like, look here, look at this line. This literally happened in one day. Like, I came down here and it was just there. Like, this whole section, this whole little black line had just appeared overnight. And I don't know if it was just an issue of, water being left on the leaf or temperature, I don't know. But it happens every year, usually happens around November, when they're kind of slowing down from their summer growth and kind of going into their resting phase. But every year I have some kind of issue. A couple years ago, got this black spot, so I'm very surprised that, they have survived this long, because they have had lots of issues. But this, I think, is just kind of a result of the repotting. It just had a little bit of a shock, but it's kind of, it doesn't concern me. It's very normal for leaves to fall off after things like that. If it was progressing really quickly and it looked like rot or something, then I'd be panicked. But anyway, my attention is right here on this little growth, this little thing here. When this plant starts its growth for this year, it will come out of that point. Alright, so as soon as that thing starts to swell, that's when we start getting excited. So eyes are on this for the next few weeks. Last year they started growing right about this time, the last week or so of January. So if they've had a good winter and they've gotten their batteries plenty charged from the light, then hopefully we'll get some good growth this year, and maybe even possibly, fingers crossed, if everybody crosses their fingers and claps 3 times and does a little dance, maybe this plant will produce a flower for us this year. Who knows? Alright guys, that is all for today. I really appreciate you stopping by. I hope that you found this interesting and that you enjoyed checking on my green pets. Thank you guys so much for the recommendations for other YouTube channels to check out. I really, really enjoyed some of them. I decided that my favorite YouTube channels, whether it's about plants or cars or weather or anything, my favorite channels are the ones where I feel like the person, the host, is talking to me. When I feel like there's a personal connection there, those are the ones that really get me, and I have to say, a lot of you recommended Rick L's channel, and man, I went to his channel and I just kind of scrolled through and I was like, wow, he's got lots of videos, and there was one in the list that was titled Thank You, and I said, okay, well, I'll start with this one. So I went down to that one and I watched it, and I thought, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that guy's channel is emotionally compelling. It is like a wow. It's so much more than just growing orchids, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, so Rick L, props to you, kudos to you. Your channel is awesome, you are awesome, and thank you for making the videos that you make, because those are really inspiring. So, that being said, this is William Green. These are my green pets, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by, guys.